Okay, my name is Peter Wong. I am a heritage developer, of course, as well as now the executive chairman of China Chamber of Tourism. I actually come across tourism about 20 years ago when I travel on the Silk Road. To my surprise, I see a lot of premium customers, scholars. I mean, despite the lack of facilities in China, they are, so enthusiastic about going there. So I launched a market study with WTO, World Tourism Organizations, in the early 90s, and discovered that at that time, 70% of the tourist dollar spent is in visiting heritage worldwide for a long time. And so it is really a very exciting market to look in China. Especially in the early days in the 90s, tourism is still not yet regarded as a major opportunity for development. So that's why 20 years ago, I started moving into cultural tourism. And on that, we actually done some fine market survey in Japan. And to our surprise, in Japan in the early 90s, every year they have about 30,000 Japanese visitors who would like to come to China. Basically, just want to go to the Silk Road. But because there was not enough facilities, travel and accommodation in China, they can only accommodate 50,000. That's only 20%. So at the early 90s, the Japanese Tourism Organization, the JTB, they were forced to actually divert the Japanese tourists to Guilin and Beijing. But the main tourist attraction in the early days in China is on the Silk Road, on cultural tourism. And that is why 20 years ago, I started investing and operating this cultural tourism for 20 years without look back.
Why did you think the Japanese tourists were really interested in Silk Road tourism destination?
Well, Silk Road is now a universal icon of exchanges between different cultures. And it is positive exchanges really attracts people. Since 2,000 years ago, when China first engaged the Romanized Persia, the Western world, the two civilizations have amalgamated and really push forward our human civilizations as never done before. And with the enhanced infrastructures in travel, the connectivity is really in a completely different arena in the 21st century. And especially in the past 2 years, when China, President Xi, start promoting the Belt and the Road, it really now pushing the Silk Road to a new height. And tourism is one of the key development that China and the neighboring countries on the Silk Roads are really emphasizing in as the first batch of development opportunities.
How does your company become TNT leader?
Really, not so much as leader as such. I think that because our company is early in going into the cultural tourism in China, and that we actually gone into quite extensive study on some good experience from Europe and Japan. Europe and Japan has had profound experience in developing heritage. The whole Venice is a living heritage. All the Japanese destinations are well preserved, including some of the ancient Tang Dynasty buildings are still preserved, for 1,200 years. So we have had very good global experience. But China, just coming out of our open door, in the 90s, it is an area that lack of attention. And I think recent years, people start realize its importance. And so I'm very glad to see that the people at large or institutes both government and non-government is now very interested to look into help to develop and preserve our heritage. And of course, travel and tourism is one of the best mediums, to push forward this ideal.
And what are your experiences with the UNWTO, that is the World Tourism Organization Silk Road Project?
Actually, I have the honor, because of my early work in the Silk Road in China, in the early 90s, when the UN multi-agencies initiate the Silk Road projects of UN. It was WTO because it was not as yet enrolled in UN, not enough nations. UNESCO, UNDP has been very active in pushing forward the Silk Road. And China is very cooperative and active in participating as well with our CNTA, China National the Tourism Bureau, and the Ministry of Commerce. But at that time, as we all know, if we go back in the early 90s, Central Asia, we have a lot of new nations just established. And of course, a big part of it in Southern Asia, like Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, is still having a security problem. There are sporadic wars. So it was not very safe. But anyway, at that time, UN took the initiative, start looking into cross-government cooperations to revive the Silk Road mission in the past, to connect different cultures and civilizations and people. So 20 years down the road, many things have happened. The world has changed. The Central Asian nations, the Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, all these nations have become now new emerging economies, more stable politically, and also having some money to spend. And we are also seeing the southern border on the Silk Road from China, the Southern Asian area, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, all these areas are coming out of calamities of war. And they are also working for economic development. So it really now we have the best environment for cooperation for development to revive the Silk Road own missions of connecting people, connecting nations is really the right time. And of course, it is most opportune time for China as well, because at this current time, after 30 years reform and open door, China has accumulated the resources that is necessary not only for China's own internal development of the Silk Road, but at the same time, those experience and resources can also now be shared, as President Xi has laid out in his broad policies on the Silk Road development of the Belt and the Road.
When your company made its first investment in tourism projects in northwest China, what were the difficulties and challenges facing your company at that time, and how did you solve that?
Yes, in the early 90s, when I started my first project in Dunhuang, because I have to say Dunhuang is a World Heritage, has been named there, and it's one of the most extraordinary World Heritage, because Mogao Caves is a 1600 years living heritage, where in the caves, different nationalities, different ethnic races, different faith have their marks, their heritage left on the caves. And that is a treasure trove really shared by the world. There's a saying, we always say that the Mogao Caves is in China, but the Mogao Caves treasure is all over the world. And now we have a scholar title called the Dunhuangnology, which for all Tai Chetri educations who want to know about China, they have got to study that, Dunhuangnology. So profound as it may be, but in the early days when China was just opening up, when tourism hasn't received the attention as like what it has now, and of course at the same time economic development is the prime objective at that time. Cultural matters taking a really in the back seat. at those days. So when going in as a developer, as a business, we come across the ordinary difficulties as the early day China traders. People don't obey the law, and even the law on your side, trying to carry it out is not easy. And of course, the local support, logistic on material supply, appropriate human resources is still a problem. But those are the early days. Now, last year, the high-speed train already been now through from the Central Plain to Urumqi, passed through the main Silk Road. So it's a completely different arena in the field of cultural heritage development and revise of the Silk Road spirit.
Since you mentioned the Zhonghuang Caves, some people will say that developing tourism and also protecting this cultural heritage may have some conflicts. So do you think it's possible to develop tourism and also we can protect this cultural heritage?
Oh, it has got to go hand in hand. A heritage, the most successful heritage is a living heritage. It is not just a monument. I mean, if just a monument, that is something we also treasure. But as a living heritage, people actually learn and continue on with the tradition in the past. And that is really, I would say, the essence of culture. That is the elements, we are promoting the elements that makes up our civilization. And that, I think, is really why the attractiveness of the Silk Road stands on. As a road, as a belt, it is not only just for one nation, one people, it is for all. If we study it long enough, especially this highlight in the Mogao Caves, all the stories that was told, we'll find you in me in you, and the world is one.
And how does this One Belt and One Road initiative open up new opportunities for your company?
I think there's certainly a lot as travel and tourism business. Emphasis is on the connectivity, and China has now the resources to really enhance and upgrade the overall facilities in traveling, both in air, on land, and by rail, and on road, as well as on sea. And there are long-term, medium, and short-term plans, which has been now laid out by the state government. And Prime Minister Li Keqiang is now working very hard to come up with the 13th five-year plan. And I think many people like me, we are watching closely the details of the 13th five-year plan, which have a lot of relevance with the Belt and the Road development. And because the Belt and the Road development, it not only just confined to our Chinese own development, very much the big portion of those plans have mutual benefits and concerns with all our neighbors. When we mention the Silk Road, people often say that, well, that is just a road. Then what about the other part of the world? That is a subject actually being discussed in UN for a long time in the UN Silk Road projects. But now there's a consensus is that actually the Silk Road, may iron it out as Richthofen, the scholar who created the word only about 200 years ago. But actually the spirit it carries, the spirit of promoting positive exchange to enhance global harmonious development, should be a mission for all cities, all states, and all people. And whichever city, whichever states share that spirit, they would rightly be called, they are also on the Silk Road. So with this message, the Silk Road spirit will carry us through all over the world to the Pacific. As we, in this forum, we have a lot of our friends from the other sides of the oceans. And so actually the Silk Road spirit is for all.
And what was the most interesting insight you had during this forum?
This forum?
Yeah.
I think number one is very interesting that we are glad that this is now the fourth term that we are having it. and we have achieved our regional set mission and goal. And we have started seeing it just from a forum, we have started seeing it coming into a movement of promoting tourism into its global universal value of promoting peace, development, and of course, understanding between people.
Actually, Hong Kong and Macau, they have rich cultural elements. So how do you think this One Belt and One Road initiative will open up new opportunities for Hong Kong and Macau to develop as a culture hub or culture center?
I think as a link with the road and the belt, both Hong Kong and Macau has a role to play. But of course, as a cultural exchange center, Macau has a longer history with Portugal than Hong Kong with British. So I would say that Macau has much more to offer in terms of heritage linkage on the Silk Road. But Hong Kong, in the modern days, we do have some of our niches in the business opportunities, as we have already had a very strong platform of logistics, of financial service, of travel and tourism center, and of course as a center of scholarly learning, for study. And so Hong Kong has our own niches, but I think that we would see those would be further highlighted in 2 years' time when the Zhuhai, Hong Kong and Macau road, the link road is being completed. Then the three area, Hong Kong, Macau, and the Pearl River Delta will be getting closer together. And so I think in that medium and longer term, there are much more to look forward to Hong Kong and Macau to collaborate, to really pursue the long-term goal as set down by the road and the belt.
And according to your experiences and observation, maybe what challenges or difficulties will your company or this cultural tourism industry will face in the future?
I think we are very optimistic of the development in the past because there are so many cultural heritage sites have not yet been really properly packaged, properly protected, presented to the tourism industry. And having the excitement at the same time, I'm worrying because everybody is now going in, including many of the unprofessional people who may destroy rather than protect in the course of the development. I think that is the biggest concern. We do have a very good government policies and visions on the cultural heritage development, but it is really the execution in the local level which is my main concern. In the cultural heritage development opportunities inside and outside of China, there are plentiful. It's actually, I would really urge the people who is in the rest of the world, and like in Europe and in Japan, who are very experienced in the heritage development, there are plenty of opportunities for them, and we are looking forward to cooperation with them as well.
You mentioned in other newspapers that you think the Western Kowloon cultural district that is worth developing and promoting. Why do you think?
Western Kowloon. I think there's a different perspective. Western Kowloon is really in the city of the town, or the center of the town. I would have thought that the development philosophy needs to be reconsidered in view of the new overall development in the region and in the global perspective. It starts with it's really a mixed development with the local residents, with a cultural facilities that attracts a lot of the newcomers and tourists. There is a clash. So the original planning of the Western Kowloon, I think, warrants a revisit of its mission and direction.
And what is a creative living culture?
Creative living culture. Okay. there's three words there: creative, living, and culture. Actually, culture is a word, if you ask 10 people may have different answers. If we really want to be technical about culture, there was actually a forum a few years ago called it "What is Culture?" And I did make a contribution on that. When asked what is culture, I would say that culture is the element of our civilization. It encompasses the tangible one, the way we live, the way we eat, the way we dress, and the way we travel. These are tangible. Intangible ones, our thinking, our faith, our beliefs. And in the tangible form, there are people who are very creative, who would lead in developing all these arenas. The way to live, the way to dress, the way to eat, the way to travel. And if their mode, their creation are accepted by the common people, it becomes a common culture. It will be marked in our civilizations. So really, our civilization is actually created between creative and common culture.
And one more question is, do you still enjoy going traveling yourself?
Yes. The reason why I say that is that through the years with the Silk Road projects, with several UN agencies, with so many different professionals, there is one thing we come up with in our development mission. We call it the 6 E's. It applies both in English and Chinese. 6个 E, 你依附 and E, A, B, C, D, E. It's economy, employment, education, environment, exchanges of culture, and lastly, most important, is entertainment. We have got to be happy and be jovious of what we do. Despite there may be difficulties, it may be sweat and tears at times, but we have got to enjoy it. If not, rather not doing it. So this 6 years are most of the people when we engage in the Silk Road projects will come up with. And I think that is also a consensus amount of people who have been involved in the UN Silk Road projects.
Is there anything you want to add that I didn't mention?
No, just to cover this, I think what I want to add is that I would ask participants to really write out your own definition of culture before we all talk about culture, if we are talking of the same thing. More or less, people feel that a culture may be related to art, creative one. But if to be more technical, culture are elements of our civilization. It is just oscillate between creative and common culture.
And one more question is, maybe what are your suggestions to those investors who want to make investment into this cross-industry?
Okay, study culture. If you don't know what is the cultural heritage, the story behind, you don't know what you're investing in. And heritage and culture, the most valuable thing is it has to be authentic. The most popular cultural heritage sites are, they have the living element at the same time, are properly authenticated.
Maybe what are your experiences in terms of studying the culture you mentioned?
No, I'm a businessman, I'm not a scholar. But now when I go into a cultural project, the first is the cultural positioning. And for that, we have to know what we are selling. Because as a business perspective, I'm selling culture, taking use of the topic of culture. So I have got to know what I'm talking about in order to share that with people, to also hope that people can get some good experience out of it. One thing we always emphasize on the Silk Road, the projects are, we have got to highlight the positive exchange. Exchanges takes very different forms. Some are negative, disease, war, and that we don't want. We want really the ease, entertainment, education, employment, economy, and of course environment awareness. That is the ecology. That is most important now. It's a universal concern, environment protection.